be answered is, why does something exist rather than nothing? This is why the Quran, which is the book of the Muslims, also states, do they think the universe came out of nothing? Now we could respond to this perennial question by positing a cause for the universe or claiming that the universe is uncaused. Well, let's take the atheist conclusion, which generally is that the universe is a brute fact. For example, Bertrand Russell, the famous atheist philosopher, he said in the 1960s on a radio program, the universe is just there and that's all. It's a brute reality. But if that is the case, that would imply and indicate that the universe is eternal. And if the universe is eternal, it would mean that the universe has an infinite history of past events. Now, let's question this. Can there be an infinite number of anything in the real world? Well, from a philosophical position, it doesn't make sense. It leads to absurdities. As the philosophers say, there is no ontological export of the concept of the infinite into the real world. Now let me give you some examples for you to understand this better. Imagine we have an infinite number of Richard Dawkins in this room, okay? And say I took 10 Richard Dawkins away, how many Richard Dawkins do we have left? Infinity or infinity minus 10. Whatever position we take, we should practically be able to count how many Richard Dawkins there are in this room, but we can't. It leads to absurdities. Another example. Imagine there are 100 Richard Dawkins in this room, and at every possible moment, I add another Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins 101, Richard Dawkins 102, Richard Dawkins 1,000,001, and so forth. Will I ever reach a number of Richard Dawkins which we can describe as infinite? No, because we could always add another Richard Dawkins. So what does this say to us? This says to us that the infinite in the real world doesn't exist. In the mathematical realm of discourse, it exists because it's based on certain axioms and conventions. But in the real world, it simply doesn't exist. This is why mathematicians Kasman and Newman, they said the infinite certainly does not exist in the same sense that we say there are fish in the sea. Also, the famous German mathematician David Hilbert, he said the infinite is nowhere to be found in reality. It neither exists in nature nor provides a legitimate basis for rational thought. The role that remains for the infinite to play is solely that of an idea. But brothers, sisters and friends, events are not just ideas, they are real things. Therefore, the number of events in the universe cannot be infinitely long. They must be finite. And that would indicate that there must have been a beginning to the universe. And if the universe had a beginning, therefore it must have a cause.